Welcome to No More Illusions, the show that helps you see clearly so you can soar. Today we have a special bonus episode. I'm so excited to have an old friend of mine, Andy Vargo. Met him ages ago at the No Longer Virtual Conference. I think we met twice, two of those conferences, and were able to bond. And I've been following Andy's exploits and his career, and he's been doing the same for me. And we recently got back in touch and was super excited to hear more about what he's doing. And he graciously agreed to come on and be a guest on this show to share some of his past illusions and what he learned about it. Welcome, Andy.
Thank you so much, Joe. I'm just excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, let's get everyone situated since we can't be in the same room together. Where are you calling from and what's around you when you look around?
I'm in Tacoma, Washington, so the northwest corner of the U.S. And, I'm sitting in my room that doubles as everything. I got my bed to one side of me, the dresser to the other, but directly behind me in front of me is a window that goes to a green belt that's the backside of a college that has all these hiking trails and stuff you can walk through. So it's hard for me sometimes to keep my mind where I need to be when it wanders to the wilderness over there.
Amazing, amazing. Beautiful, beautiful. I love it. So you shared this illusion, which I thought was really, on its surface, I never would have thought of this, but the more we talked about it, I was like, oh, that's so true. And the illusion you shared is it's always good to value your struggle. So tell us a little bit about how that's an illusion for you and how you sort of came upon that as maybe not being the truth of the matter.
Yeah, I appreciate that because for me, it was also this awakening of, wow, I'm looking at this the wrong way. I started my business 10 years ago the way that I would tell everybody not to start their business, where you're between jobs and you think, okay, I've got no resources, no runway. I'm going to jump in and follow this dream that I've always wanted to do. All the passion behind it, no resources. And looking back, no skills as a small business owner, other than what I had learned to help small businesses from the services I sold in corporate. But the things I needed to know on my own were completely different. And I've always really embraced how much that struggle meant to me, in that I was self-made. I figured it out the whole time, whether it's watching YouTube videos until 3 a.m. or getting different books from different leaders in different areas, whether it's how to build my website, whether it's how to do my craft and speak on stage, or every aspect of my business, I was self-taught. And I've really embraced that as this is cool. Like, you can throw anything at me. It's not going to stick. I'm going to get through it. And I'm going to the struggle is not going to set me back. But the other day I was dealing with something and something new came up and I was like, I'm ready for it. And I started to realize maybe I'm embracing the struggle too much, because if that struggle is gone, what story am I going to tell? And is that no longer my identity? Am I no longer the underdog or the guy that's figuring it out? But I'm tired of being the guy that's figuring it out. I want to be the winner. And I have the ability and the understanding now that I don't need to cling to that struggle. And I think you get to a point where you say, I don't want the story I'm telling to continue to be the story I'm living. I want it to be my backstory. And so that was just this eye-opening awareness for me that the struggle that I was really proud to have made it through, I was a little too proud of, and I was embracing it too much. That maybe it's not always good to embrace it. Maybe there's a time where you embrace that you went through it and you say, I'm grateful for that time in my life, but I'm also ready to move on from it.
Yeah, what's interesting to me is, as you were sharing sort of your journey through that, I almost picture like when you're grabbing onto one thing, like let's say you're on a jungle gym, like with the bars over your head, and you have to, swing from one bar to another, like you have to let go of one of the bars so you can move, and then you have to let go of the other bar so you can continue to progress. And from a business perspective, I just imagine like something coming across your desk and like you need to figure out some very specific like tax thing. So like you become a tax attorney, but it's like I know a little bit about you and your talents and it ain't doing tax law, right? Like there's
Exactly.
other things that you're so good at, but it actually kind of is that what you find happening? It like draws you away from like your strengths and the things that you're actually so good at?
Oh, definitely. I remember uh, ever since you hear people talk about this when you're running your own business, you need to put a dollar value on your role in the business and pay people to do all of the other work.
Hmm.
But when you are starting your business, you might not have those dollars to pay someone else.
Exactly.
But there becomes a point where I say, how much income could I be bringing into the business if I was focused on things that weren't figuring out making my own cover for my book
Yeah.
or editing the file that needs to be uploaded to Microsoft Word, things like that. Yeah, the shift that I think has changed for me is rather than saying, do I have the dollars to do that task? Is that task important enough to take my time right now before I have the dollars to pay someone to do it?
Yeah. And I wonder maybe sometimes some of those tasks, if someone else did it, even if you paid them, like maybe you get a bigger return. Like you actually start making money by paying someone else. Like a cheap and easy example is like, to do your sales or marketing, right? Like
Right.
if they're a professional, maybe they just do it so much better than you. You've more than made back the money you paid them.
Exactly. That's the other thing because it's both the time that you're getting back, but to exactly what you just said, now you have someone who not only is doing it faster, but better. Because we have to admit, like, yeah, I am not a tax accountant. I should not be the guy that's trying to figure out from a YouTube video and a TurboTax file how to find all the best things. Yet I could have someone else do it. They could in probably half an hour take my files and be like, wow, here you go. And we saved you even more money.
So let's go a little bit deeper on this, Andy. Like, why do you think we do that? Like why do we cling so much to a certain identity or way of being? And, that happens in all aspects of life, right? Not just, starting your own business.
Right. For me, I hate to say this because I don't want to admit it about myself, but for me, I feel like it's kind of ego and pride.
Hmm.
It's it's that sense that, well, you can't tell me this is a bad thing or make it a put down. I'm going to wear it like my scarlet letter. Like I'm going to make it a good thing and
Hmm.
really embrace it. And now it's in your face that I'm living this life
Hmm.
rather than saying, you're right. I should maybe strive for a little better.
Hmm.
And there's a balance because we don't want to be putting ourselves down. But where's the line where your story becomes your identity? And is that the identity that you want to stay living in?
Yeah. Well, and I imagine sometimes it can like to the point you were making when we were originally talking about this, it can keep you from evolving and advancing because you're so enamored of that identity and the way it makes you feel that you can't get past that to evolve to different
Right.
things that are maybe next level.
Hmm. Yeah, and you look at some of the biggest companies. I love, and I don't have a great example. I I didn't even think of this point beforehand, or I would have looked up a couple. But you look at some of the biggest names in the world, where like I know Shell Oil example. That's a good example. You know them for selling gas, petroleum, but their name comes from the fact that they were selling shells
Mm,
originally.
mm,
And they had to let go of something and evolve in order to get to where they are today. And it
mm.
doesn't mean that they, clearly that's their logo, that's their identity. It's a throwback to their past, but they didn't stay in that space. And there are so many huge corporations that are global names that when you look at what they started doing,
Mm.
they've moved well beyond that. I mean, Amazon's a good example. They started out selling books out of a
That's right.
garage. Like
Yeah.
that was the starting point. And yet, when we think Amazon, most people don't initially think books.
Yeah. Well, we love the Food Network and like watching all these food shows in our household and I was shocked. I don't know when this was, maybe a few years ago to learn, the Michelin stars, which are like
Oh,
very
right.
coveted. That's
Yeah.
from the Michelin tire company. And I
Right.
was like, what?
It was a marketing thing.
How did that
And
happen? And now
I
it's one
think
of
that
the
became the
most
premium
coveted.
standard for restaurants, right?
Yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah.
you know, um, I wonder what it is that can kind of make a company or a small business or a small business owner kind of start to identify more with the struggle than the actual goal, which is, when you started your business, your goal was not to struggle, right? Like you had a
Right.
goal like beyond that. And I just wonder how and this happens to lots of people, otherwise we wouldn't be talking about like how we get tripped up in that?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good perspective to think about because we can't move on to the success if we can't see the success and if we can't identify with it.
Yeah.
And I do think that, I polled my audience. This is a couple years ago. I should redo it. But I polled my audience on, are you more afraid of success or more afraid of failure?
Good
And
one.
surprisingly, it was neck and neck for a while, but it leaned more towards more people were afraid of success.
Wow.
And I think that's really, there's more at stake when we're successful.
Hmm.
There's more attention. So I think a lot of times we're afraid of success because we're afraid if we don't make it, we're going to be seen as a failure,
Hmm.
rather than the reality, which is most people don't take the big leap. Most people won't go for it.
Hmm.
And so just taking the risk alone, the people in your circle are going, man, look at Joe going for it. Like they're not
Hmm.
going, ha, Joe's episode didn't go past whatever number, or Joe
Hmm.
didn't stick with it. They're going, you tried and you put your neck out there, and I didn't have the guts to do that.
Hmm. I like that you use the word guts. I mean, I've been thinking a lot personally in my writings and just thinking about my career, as I, hit the second stage of my career about the people at the top, right? And as you know,
Hmm.
as everyone knows, it gets more narrow at the top. There are less slots,
Right.
especially in a, big organization like the one I work at. And when you see a lot of the people at the top, sure, some of them are really great at what they do and they're smart and they have various skills. But if I'm really honest about it, are they phenomenally more skilled or intelligent than the people who report to them? I would say no. I would say 100% that is not the case. But there is something that enabled them to climb and get that position when probably someone who's working from them now had the chance but didn't get it. And
Right.
like when you said the word guts, like I don't think of it in terms of like toughness or confidence. I almost think of like they're willing to do whatever it takes to get that thing, to be uncomfortable, to maybe succeed and feel weird about it. Like I think it's natural for a lot of people not to want to go there. They'd rather be comfortable, including
Hmm.
myself for most of my career. We'd rather be comfortable, right? Why have that stress? Why have that pressure? Why court that disaster when you can have a perfectly comfortable life being a number two or a number three?
Right.
I think there is something about people, and I'm not saying they're better people, but there's something in their psychology or their approach that enables them to get through that where
Hmm.
other people fall off or get stuck. That's just a
Yeah,
theory.
I definitely agree with that. And I think when you look at the people who rise to the top, I agree. It's not a difference in skill,
Hmm.
but it can be a difference in skill on how to play the game. Like they might
Mm.
know whether they did it by design and
Hmm.
saying, this is what I need to do to move forward,
Hmm.
or survival instinct. Maybe they're wired a different way where they couldn't afford to have all those thoughts around holding themselves back. I think about, I came from a family of 7 kids, and it's like if you didn't fend for yourself, you're out of luck. So you got to speak up. But I was also the youngest, so my siblings were mainly moved out, so I didn't have to fight that fight the same way.
Hmm.
However, I think when you look at people who advance and who don't hold back on asking for what they want,
Hmm.
you think, why don't we? Why don't we say, hey, I'd love to have a meeting with you to talk about X, Y, and Z, or what I could get out of this conversation, but we get so timid around it. And when that becomes the way that we go about our approach,
Hmm.
people don't bother people don't think that you even want something because you've never spoken up and asked. Like, I just thought you were happy. I didn't think you wanted to move up. I didn't think that you had desire to move up in the company, or I didn't think you needed another sale because you never said, hey, I could really use some attention over here. I'd like to be considered for this opportunity.
The words that resonate so much with me, the words that come to mind when you were talking is, are we playing small? You
Hmm.
know, it's
Yeah,
like you have all these skills and ability and potential, but you intentionally play small. Why would we expect anyone else to take a bet on us or give us more responsibility when we're playing small to begin with?
exactly. One of my favorite quotes from one of Brene Brown's talks,
Hmm.
it's in her Netflix special, A Call to Courage. And there's a line in there where she says, up until this point, she says, I had manufactured my life to stay small.
Oh, wow.
And then she gives all these examples like I would submit an article to the local paper but not the New York Times. I
Uh,
would submit a talk here but not there. And
yeah,
that really hit home where I thought, wow, I have engineered my small life in a lot of ways where because I was afraid to take the leap.
yeah, yeah. You know, that happens so many times. Like, there's even been times where, like, I doubt myself. Like, I have the opportunity to reach out to someone, either to,
Hmm.
have them come on the podcast or ask them a question. And sometimes I shy away. Sometimes I jump in and say, yeah, I'm going to email that person and, write the
Right.
best freaking email. And other times I'm like, I don't want to bother. But like, really, what do I have to lose by writing every single email when that thought comes into mind? I'm not any worse off for having hit send.
Exactly. Well, and I have started, I went through this about a year ago, and I want to get back to this practice where I would challenge myself once a week
Mhm.
the way I used to phrase it was to invite someone that I didn't expect to say yes to come on my show.
I love that.
And then I rephrased it to even say to invite someone who I didn't used to think would say yes.
Oh, I see what you did there.
Just the play on words in my head because it's like if I'm saying it that way, I'm still expecting them to say no.
Yeah.
And now when I have you on my show, I can say, Joe, welcome to the Own Your Awkward podcast. You're among
Yeah.
great people. Guests that have been invited on include Brene Brown
Yeah.
and Mel Robbins and
That's right.
list all these big names. I said invited on. I didn't say they said yes, but it's kind of a reminder that we have to be willing to take the risk and not put limits on why we don't have to make up a reason why someone should say no to us.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you a funny story because you mentioned Brene Brown. I wasn't going to bring this up, but it's just, I love that quote, by the way, that you shared. So thank you for that. A couple weeks ago, I had an opportunity to record a video for our Global Values Week to talk about what KPMG value is important to me and why, like kind of a
Hmm.
rah, rah, rah corporate video.
Right.
And as part of what I try to do with my networking personal brand career is I always try to say yes to stuff like that, right? It's like because a lot of
Sure.
people are going to say no.
Hmm.
But I was kind of like, I don't know, all the usual excuses, too busy, no time, blah, blah, blah. But I was like, all right, Joe, put on your, big boy, put on your adult pants and, let's do this. So I send the video and, I try to send a polished video. I think it's pretty good. And I get an email back. And the email says, oh, thank you for sending in your video. So many people sent in so many videos. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to use your video. Right. So I'm a little disappointed, but then keep reading. It said, by the way, our guest for Global Values Week is going to be Brene Brown.
Oh, wow.
And if you like, we would love for you to participate in asking her a question, a pre-recorded question via video. So
Yeah.
then again, no guarantee that I'm going to get it. And they said, please respond if you'd like to do it. And I'm like, I love Brene Brown, just like you. I was like, I would love to ask
Right.
her even a video question. It's not even live. So
Hmm.
I record the video and I get, it hasn't been confirmed, but I'm like talking to the people internally and they seem to like it. So I'm thinking maybe I'll get to ask Brene Brown a question. But that doesn't happen if I don't take the first step of saying, hey, I'm going to submit this thing for Global Values Week, which is going to be seen by thousands of people. And I'm going to be
Right.
like an idiot, like on video talking.
Mhm.
I could have easily passed on that.
Right. And also, a lot of times, better opportunities come from what is first a rejection,
Yes.
based on how we handle it too. Sometimes people say no, and you're like, oh, you could be like, oh, screw that. Or, like, I don't, fine, I didn't need you anyway. But if you can take it with dignity and with, oh,
Mhm.
great, maybe next time, or when it works out, great. However, when you then handle things that way, and even if
Mhm.
you don't respond, but just in your head, you have that attitude,
Mhm.
you might not have even finished reading that email if you had the wrong attitude. You'd have been like, ah, they
Exactly. That's
didn't,
a good one. Yeah,
you know?
definitely.
And then you're like, wait, if it were me, at least, I would rather have my question asked to Brene Brown than have my other video show.
100%.
So, yeah, so that's awesome. I hope that happens.
Yeah. You know, it's just interesting how uh how big we imagine our world to be, right? It's like, do I have the imagination, the capability to imagine that, not that this is the be all and end all, but that my brand or what I'm doing becomes as big as someone like a Brene Brown or a Mel Robbins or a Tony
Right.
Robbins, right? Like, do I even have the capacity to dream
Hmm.
that big? And I used to do this thing at the office where we had this beautiful conference room, right? And I would go in there and I would sit at the head of the table like I'm like the CEO. I would just
Right.
sit there just to feel, the gravitas, like,
Yeah.
oh, these 12 people are reporting to me, marketing, security, blah, blah, blah. Like, just to feel, could I even imagine that? And I feel sometimes that's also part of playing small and embracing, like, oh, I'm the scrapper, right? Like I'm the one
Right.
who's unappreciated. I do the tough jobs, and you start to identify that, instead of saying, you know what, I could be running a multi-global company. Again, not like that's the be all or end all, but do you even have the imagination to think that?
Right. And I think also there's something about before you get there,
Hmm.
creating the dynamics that are expecting you to get there.
Tell
Like
me more about that.
so one of the things is I had this realization not too long ago that I'm already living the life I want to be living. Like I'm hanging out with the people I want to hang out with. Most of the freedom I have in my day is what I would be having when I have more attention and fame or whatever. And in fact, I may
Sure.
lose some of that if there's too much fame.
Yeah, yeah.
And so having to be able to say, the only difference is going to be the peace of mind of dollars in the bank as I
Hmm.
have more gigs on the counter. And yeah, I'll have more travel or I'll have more things going on. But there are pieces of our lives that we can already create
Hmm.
and appreciate that are in place that we will be living once we have that happen.
Hmm.
But also on the flip side, I am setting things up as my business grows to be planning for it to be bigger in a way that is uh, like one of the things I do now is every time I figure out a new process in my business,
Hmm.
I actually have a prompt that I drop into AI, whatever thread I'm working in, and I say, can you write this as an SOP that someone can take over this process if they had no
Oh,
history?
I like that. I like
And
that.
so now I have this training manual
Uh-huh.
with the expectation that I'm going to be hiring a crew. So it's like I'm managing my business as if I have a team before I have the team, so that when they now come on board, it's training my brain to be planning to be living bigger than I need to live right now in that size of company wise.
Yeah. And, you and I talked about this. I love using AI, especially for some of my writing and posting. And it's just amazing some of the processes it can help you do.
Right.
Even I was talking to a colleague of mine, he's been using it to coach him in terms of his job search and his
Hmm.
brand and how to do his resumes and stuff,
Right.
stuff that normally, and I think there is value definitely of hiring someone to do it. But if you're going to do it on your own, he's getting much better results partnering with the AI in a sense than he would if he had to watch YouTube videos and figure everything out on his own from
Right.
scratch.
Yeah. Anytime you can get specific feedback to your situation,
Hmm.
it's going to be different.
Yeah. Another thing I've seen with people who maybe move beyond the struggle and move on is I'll often come across people who have like a very specific agenda to get to a position or to be promoted in a couple number of years.
Hmm.
And I'm a little bit embarrassed to say sometimes I have a bit of like a negative reaction to that, maybe a little bit judgmental. And the more I think about it, I think it has more to do with me and my discomfort of
Sure. Oh,
of
yeah.
being determined that way and so focused. It's got less to do with their character. And I say that especially because these people that I'm talking about are either mentors of mine or mentees of mine. They're people I value and trust, and we
Right.
enjoy each other's company. So it's not like, oh, they're a bad person. But yeah, I've noticed that kind of focus and that unwillingness to stay stuck. You know, they have a vision for themselves. It's not so much
Right.
about the level or the position, but they have a vision of themselves evolving past a certain point where I think I can speak for the majority of people in corporate. They don't. It's just a general, I'm going to do a good job, I'm going to work hard. Let's see how
Hmm.
far we go. These people are like, no. You know, like in
Right.
2 years, I want to be here. In 4 years, I want to be there. And even if they don't make it, I can almost
Mhm.
guarantee they're doing better than the rest of us who are just like, let's see how this goes.
Right. Well, and that was definitely when I look back on my corporate plan, my career path was really at the mercy of what opportunities were put in front of me. I
Yes.
didn't have that mindset of I'm going to be sales manager by this point, then I'm going to
Hmm.
be branch manager, then I'm going to do corporate accounts. I was very much like, well, we'll see what the boss thinks I can do next. We'll see
Hmm.
what they give me to take on. That was also the place that I was in life. Back then, I
Hmm.
was much less confident.
Sure.
I didn't know what I wanted out of life for career path. So I was doing the things that I was good at and that I got really good feedback on. And it was more reactive in that sense of, well, I guess this is what I'll take. And so when I now encounter people who have that clarity,
Hmm.
I know back then I used to be, like you said, kind of put off by them, like,
Hmm.
like, who do you think you
Yeah,
are?
yeah, yeah, right?
Or like, well, fine, just go for it. But then in the back of my mind, I'm like, well, I should get that opportunity, but I didn't speak up for that opportunity.
Right.
And now I've learned when I have that feeling that doesn't feel that great in my gut, whether it's about something someone said or a situation, I've really learned to sit with that feeling and question, why might that feeling be there? Why is there that discomfort? Is it something that I am not comfortable? Am I disappointed in myself for not having that gumption to go for it? Am I really put off because of the person's approach? Is the person, do I really not think they're skilled and deserve it? More often than not, it's because of something self-reflective where I need to say, "Oh yeah, you're really disappointed in yourself and you're projecting it onto them because of your lack of ability to call it out and go for it."
Yeah, I 100% subscribe to like that sort of perspective and kind of like process of it. And I feel like you can really learn something about yourself through that reaction, right? Like,
Right. Yeah. Well, and because the flip side of that, or the second half, is to then say, if I'm feeling that way as a reaction to this moment or this
Mhm.
event,
Mhm.
what are the steps I'm going to take so that I'm not in this situation again, or so that I am the person who's taking that action?
Mhm. Mhm.
And or saying, yeah, I'm bothered by that, but if I really think about it, I don't want it that bad, so I do need to just let those feelings simmer.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because sometimes, you see the person get the brand new shiny toy
Mhm.
and you have that little bit of jealousy or the little bit of like, the neighbor got that or whatever the thing is. But then you realize what they had to sacrifice to get that.
Mhm.
And sometimes you come to terms with, well, I'm not willing to give up that time with my family or
Mhm.
this other toy that I have that they don't have. I chose something different, and that's okay too, but I have to be real with the choices that I've made and make sure that I'm making the right choices for myself.
You know, Andy, this conversation and this illusion is making me think very meta about this whole podcast and the point of no more illusions. And I wonder if a lot of illusions that we have, they serve a valuable function. Like the reason why we don't see them is they're serving a valuable function to keep us comfortable, to keep
Right.
us where we would like to be, or to
Hmm.
from facing what's too scary for us, right? Because a
Right.
lot of these illusions, they're kind of obvious. Like once you see it, you're like, oh my God, that's so
Right.
stupid. Why did I believe that for so long?
Yeah, well, it's one of those things, we have all these illusions that we grow up believing
Yeah,
because they were introduced when we didn't question things.
sure, sure.
And it's things that if you heard a fact today
Hmm.
that you learned as a 10-year-old,
Hmm.
you'd be like, there's no way that's true. And or
Hmm.
you would question it. You say, prove it.
Hmm.
But because you learned it at a young age, you grew up with it and you never questioned it. And then you feel a little bit foolish later where you're like, why did I form that belief? And there's things where it makes a lot of sense and it's obvious, like whether or not you believe in Santa Claus
Hmm.
or certain things like that. But some of our core beliefs, we don't step back and ask ourselves, why do I believe what I believe? And is there a reason that I'm still clinging to that? And that takes so much work. And it's like until we're challenged with them, we don't have a reason to think about it. But we have to be open to that conversation in order to grow and not get stuck, like you said.
Yeah, one other illusion that that came about when you were sharing yours, especially like in the work context, like I feel like sometimes we have illusions about like negative illusions about what it takes to climb. And we put that on other people like, oh, you know, you have to be cutthroat or,
Hmm.
oh, you have to be like a jerk to your family or something like that, right? And
Right.
whether those things are true or not, I think
Hmm.
we create this illusion in our mind that we it's a binary choice, right?
Right.
Like we have to do that or we can't be successful. And it's kind of masking our own inability to face the real fear, which is not being a jerk or being cutthroat or abandoning your family. It's probably something that has nothing to do with that, but that provides a really convenient kind of decoy, let's say.
Exactly. I think that we create the illusions that we need in order
Mm,
to fall asleep, without a guilty conscience at night.
yeah,
It's like we want to be able to say, well, yeah, I couldn't do that because of this,
yeah,
but that illusion allows me to feel okay with myself in the times where I could have pushed a little harder. I could have gotten out of my comfort zone, but if I believe the illusion, then I don't have to try harder. I don't have to get uncomfortable.
yeah. Yeah, one thing I always try to keep a perspective on is, you know, we're all human beings. Anything that's amazing that's been done, any accomplishment, physical, mental, spiritual, has been done by another human being, right? So someone
Hmm.
who isn't fundamentally different than you. Sure, we have different talents and abilities,
Sure.
but I feel like, okay, I'll use myself as an example. Like, I'm never going to dunk a basketball. I'm never going to be an NBA basketball player. However, my process around that will impact how good of a basketball player I can become, right?
Oh,
So
right.
so it's
Yeah.
not like all of a sudden I become Steph Curry, but like okay, maybe I could have played on my high school basketball team and,
Hmm.
you know, gotten some enjoyment and learned some skills and teamwork over that versus like, oh, you know, I can't jump, I'm slow, I didn't start young enough, and you create all these illusions and of course you're not going to make the team and get any benefit out of that.
Right. It's that simple sentence that is so it's so simple it seems crazy, but it's just, whether you think you can or you can't, you're
Mhm.
right.
Mhm.
And there's so much truth to that.
Yeah. Who was it? There was someone, I don't know if it was, I forget her name. I think I wrote about it in one of my books, how you add the word yet to the end of your
Right. Oh
sentence, right?
yeah, that's one of my favorite things to do.
Carol Dweck. I think it's Carol Dweck. Yeah. It's
Okay.
like, I
Yeah.
can't do this yet. And just that little addition opens up
Yeah,
so much potential.
exactly. It's just a reminder uh, that it's possible and that
Hmm.
you can keep trying. Another thing that I heard this guy say, I overheard someone say this in a cafe or a bar, and someone asked him like, "Hey, do you do this thing? And have you gotten into this hobby?" And the guy just says, "No, it was never a priority for me." And that simple, not making an excuse for, "Oh yeah, I feel like I should have because it was the cool thing to do," or
Hmm.
"Oh yeah, I just never had time." It's no, it wasn't important to me.
Hmm.
That alone is something I think we need to stand on in things that we're approaching in life instead of saying, "Oh yeah, I know I should also be a skier, and yes, I should be a cross country runner, and I should do all the things." It's like, no, that those aren't priorities. This is what I do.
So I want to rewind a little bit and go back to the beginning, like a la The Princess Bride. Got to go back to
Hmm.
the beginning. Tell me a little bit about your embracing the struggle or having to release that when you made the transition from being a corporate guy to what you do now. Like, was that difficult and how did you navigate that? Because to me, that was like a sort of pivotal struggle for you.
Definitely, yeah. So I had been in sales and had done all sorts of corporate work, and was successful in that. I had a huge account,
Yeah.
corporate national account, and we were their biggest trusted vendor, and I loved the work in a lot of ways, but it wasn't, as I made a couple changes in my career right at the end in that piece of it, I just found myself making changes to try to find happiness and then realizing that I wasn't making big enough changes
Hmm.
to really make a difference.
Hmm.
It's like you're showing up in the same uniform, but in a different, walking through a different door. And it's like all the
I like that.
furniture's in the same place. Like nothing's different.
Yeah.
And ended up getting laid off at one point, and it was right in the middle of other life changes I was going through with
Yeah.
coming out and getting divorced. And it was one of these like, this is the worst time in my life to try to start a business. But I had this calling to be a speaker and be a writer.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
was one of those now or never moments. Like
Yeah.
this is the time to do it. This is the time to just go all in on that. Because
Yeah.
when you're in a corporate career, for at least the role that I was in, I didn't feel comfortable promoting my own business in a way that I could go all in without that looking like I was too focused away from what I should be
Right.
doing for my career.
Of course. Of course.
So I was like, well, I can't really be promoting my side stuff, which is what I need to do in order to get the gigs. So I just went all in and did a bunch of side jobs to pay the bills. I was already doing that kind of stuff just to get by with divorce anyway.
Hmm.
And the first few years it really was a struggle because I didn't really know. I didn't have my branding fully developed. I didn't know who my target customer and audience was. I knew in my gut that this was a message. Own Your Awkward was a message that hit home with a lot of people and make a
Yeah.
big difference with teams if we can create that type of environment.
Yeah.
But I didn't know how to sell that to corporate.
Yeah.
And so I really struggled with that for a couple of years, really started to get things together and make sense right at the end of 2019. And then we had, this little thing called COVID that threw a wrench in
Sure.
activities. But there were so many times where I said, why am I doing this? Is this like, I would continually say, should I give up? Is it time to quit? And I would ask myself two questions. It would be, can I make it another 6 months? And have I seen progress in the last 6 months?
Oh, I like that.
And so if I could say, yes, I've seen progress in the last 6 months and I can make it another 6 months, then the third question would be, well, what is the next most important thing I need to do? There's something I need to do right now that's different or that I haven't tried yet. Because I know the first time I thought about giving up, I told myself, yeah, I need to quit. I should just throw in the towel. This isn't going anywhere. And immediately it's like the devil and the angel, one on each
Yeah.
shoulder.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
right away the other shoulder started speaking because in one voice I was saying, well, I tried everything I could, I can quit, right? Like that was the illusion. And then the other the guy, I don't know if it was the angel or the devil, because I'm still not sure which is the good guy or the bad guy in this case. But they said, no, you didn't. You still didn't return this email. You still didn't reach out to this person. You still didn't create this post.
Mm.
I instantly had this list of all this stuff that it was like this urgency of, you're right, I didn't do all that. I didn't try all these things.
Mhm.
So then I could take that next 6 months and go, well, I need to try all those things. And then that same thing happened 6 months later. And even though in the moment I never felt like I had huge leaps in
Mhm.
my business,
Mhm.
there got to a point where I looked back and I thought, if 5 years ago Andy saw Andy today, the persona that Andy has online, that's the people I was trying to model my life after.
Right.
Like I'm getting there.
Yeah.
And we don't see it in the moment, but
No, you
if
can't.
we take a step back and go, that was the website I wanted to have. That would have been the stages I wanted to say I was on with the crowd, the size crowd. And so it's hard when you're in the moment to realize how far you've come and to be then able to measure that success while still putting a map to continue the success beyond where you're at.
Well, I really like those two questions you asked because one thing that I always wonder about, not that, I'm doing what you're doing, I'm still very much ensconced in corporate life, is as you're struggling and as you're getting that feeling that, okay, maybe you need to pivot, right?
Hmm.
It's like, how can you tell the difference between when it's just fear and doubt and success is right around the corner because you got to stick
Right.
in it, right? Like to get those
Hmm.
successes, right?
Yeah.
Versus how much of it is, yeah, you're just really not improving and this isn't going to work. And I love how you frame that, right? The 6 months question, and it just because it gives you a little bit more clarity, right? It's not just based on a
Right.
gut. It's based on like, for lack of a better word,
Hmm.
like data over what's been happening and what you think could happen. So I really like
Right.
that. Thanks for sharing that.
And and I did something a little different in that rather than get back into a corporate job because also with so many life changes, there was a little bit of shame around like I'm ready to be out of this space. Like I need to
Yeah.
reset. So I had my own whole thing going on. However, rather than pursue getting back in a corporate job as I started my business, I became excited about the idea about making as little as possible in day job income
Uh-huh.
so that it was easier to quit. So because then I didn't need to make 100 or $200,000 to walk away from a corporate job.
Yeah.
I could say, if I make 40,000, 50,000 bucks, I can walk. Now, that takes a lot of humility in your lifestyle and a
Yep.
lot of
Yep.
grit, which I was fine with.
Mm-hmm.
However, that made it dropped the threshold on how successful my business needed to be in order for me to walk away. Now, that's different for everybody because I could have used a lot of those funds to really help make my business successful sooner. There's that argument too. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Interesting, interesting. So, as we wrap up, because we didn't talk about this as much when we were catching up, I would love to hear a little bit about where Own Your Awkward is now at this point in the journey. I've seen your talks. You're a brilliant speaker, very inspiring. Your life story, very courageous. And I know people respond to you. I know you have many talents, including, stand-up comedy, sales. So what's sort of on the roadmap these days and how have things evolved for you?
oh, thank you for asking that. It's been a great evolution. When I started, I didn't know how all the pieces worked together. And people would introduce me. They're like, "This is my friend Andy. He's a
Yeah.
stand-up comic and a speaker and an author." And I'm like, "Yeah, pick a thing. I don't know." And I really had to do a lot of introspective work on how am I showing up and what is it that I bring to the world, and really worked to bring all of those pieces together around the idea that I develop people and teams to lean into their awkward thing and learn to use that as their superpower rather than saying, I'm successful or I'm doing all right even though I have this thing. The conversation is no, I'm successful and I'm a rock star because I have this thing. And
Mm.
I've learned how to lean into it.
Hmm.
One of the things I hear people say is they're maybe shy or introverted, and
Hmm.
that gets a bad rap in the office. Like, oh, you gotta be the outgoing guy. You gotta show up with the networking stuff. It's like, yeah, but this guy's observing a lot of stuff that we're missing because of his perspective,
Hmm.
because he's not out there glad handing everybody and doing cheers and all this stuff. He's noticing some pretty big problems that he's
Hmm.
able to raise his hand and say, "Hey, we got a little thing over here." And it's different with everybody, but that's what I've been able to bring the whole message to help the world with. And then I do that through speaking and comedy, and I've done a lot of work to bring my speaking and comedy together so that when I'm on stage, I hear a lot. I have a lot of really serious topics that I approach with a lot of brevity and put some humor and self-deprecation into in a way that helps the audience be relatable and engaging. That our dear friend Melissa Hughes, who always is doing the brain science, which I
Yeah.
absolutely love, shared with me that people are learning at a 33% higher rate when they're laughing. And so I'm like, see,
Oh,
there's science behind
that's
my like
right.
I don't know these numbers until I do the deep diver study or I read some of her stuff. And I think, oh, there's actually science and there's a reason why this makes sense. So I do whether it's conference keynotes and breakouts or development days for teams and then one-on-one coaching, but it's all around not changing who you are to be successful, but really embracing it. And I like one of my new things is stop trying to make everybody a Batman
Hmm.
and build a team like the Avengers. We all have our talents, we all have our
Mm.
weaknesses.
Hmm.
When we're together, we're unstoppable.
Hmm.
But instead of trying to say, oh, you know what, you need this tool, you need that tool, put them on your tool belt, and now you can do all the things. Well, you're still going to die when you fall off the building.
Hmm. So let me ask, because you mentioned COVID and I've experienced you primarily like in person, which is where I think you kind of it's like a sweet spot for you. Like post COVID, like have you transitioned to do or to be more open to doing more virtual things or online, or are you still primarily looking to do things in person?
I do both.
Hmm.
I there's an art to doing virtual in a way that is still engaging for the audience. There's a
Yep, yep.
different set of,
100%.
we've all been on those Zooms where you feel like you could be watching a YouTube special versus where they're like, hey, comment here, where are you from?
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
getting the audience engaged so that you almost feel guilty if you're not in the chat.
Yeah.
Uh, oh, and then we've also been in the Zooms where there's a bunch of side chatter going on in the chat. And you're like, are
Yeah.
you guys even watching? So I do those. My sweet spot, I really do love being in person because I love engaging with people.
Yeah, yeah,
I love
yeah.
having that interaction. So as much as possible, I try to get in-person stuff lined up. But one thing I did also add into my offerings is an online academy that has some of my workshops now as a course.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, I love doing that because it's information that sometimes I'll do a keynote with somebody, but they want to go deeper with their team,
Hmm.
or people want to buy it one off. So as I create them for corporate, then I have the version that people could just buy for themselves if they want. So I have that virtual offering, and I do, you see the videos. I make a lot of videos. So I'm used to being on camera,
Yeah, yeah.
uh, but it's just something about being in the room with people. You just can't replace that energy.
Yeah, yeah. Well, if folks want to learn a little bit more about what you do or just get in touch based on this conversation, what's the best way to connect?
The easiest way, well, my website's awkwardcareer.com, and you can find me. There's a let's chat there. I'm
Mhm.
also always excited to connect on LinkedIn or any social media. The website's got, all the social media links on the bottom. So if you go there, you're going to find everything, and it's a great spot to get started. There's a downloadable worksheet that helps you find your hidden superpower. It's the start to your awkward journey. But yeah, just hit me up, send a message, or set up a chat, and love to get to know you.
I will include that in the show notes. And I did note that that was pretty savvy how you have the takeaway handout. That's probably something the 10 years ago Andy hadn't thought of and hadn't implemented, but that's really nice.
No, I would say the 8 month ago Andy didn't have that implemented. So it's a continual evolution.
We're always learning, brother. We're always learning.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. I mean, to my audience, he's a dear friend, great collaborator, just an all around wonderful human being. Thank you for sharing with us your illusion that it is always good to value your struggle.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Quick announcement, I'm excited to share that Unlock Your Executive Presence, Feel Like a Boss is now available as an audiobook. You can get it now at connectioncounselor.com or just search Unlock Your Executive Presence on Amazon or Audible. It's my second audiobook, and I took a lot of care in producing and narrating it for those of you who'd rather listen than read about how to actually generate executive presence. Thanks for listening to No More Illusions. I'm Joe Kwon, the Connection Counselor. Remember, clarity reveals, illusion steals.